Good morning, I'm Gretchen Hall. It is a Tuesday, the 24th day of June. I'm bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a complete and total ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Trump's announcement, which labeled the conflict the 12-day war, came as a surprise with no immediate official confirmation from either the Israeli or Iranian governments. Oil companies implement staggered fuel price hike this week. The first tranche of increases took effect today, June 24, with the second round of hikes scheduled for Thursday, June 26. PDP Laban is challenging the senatorial election results, filing a petition before the Supreme Court for a manual recount. The party argues that a physical audit of the ballots is the only way to validate the outcome and restore public trust in the electoral process. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced what he claims is a major diplomatic breakthrough between Israel and Iran. On his Truth social platform, Trump congratulated both countries for agreeing to a, quote, complete and total ceasefire, which he dubbed the end of the 12-day war. He hinted, however, that some final operations may still be carried out by both sides before the full ceasefire takes effect. Now, as of now, there has been no official confirmation from Israel, Iran, or the White House regarding the reported ceasefire deal. Now, prior to that, Iran launched a missile strike targeting a major U.S. airbase in Qatar. The strike comes after American bombers hit parts of Tehran's nuclear facilities over the weekend. Here is the report.
Explosions were heard over Doha, the capital of Qatar, as missiles streaked across the night sky on Monday. Iran's military later claimed responsibility, saying it had launched what it called a devastating and powerful missile attack on the Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East. Qatar's defense minister said its air defenses intercepted multiple missiles aimed at Al Udeid. No casualties were reported, but officials strongly condemned the attack and said they reserve the right to respond. The strike follows U.S. air raids over the weekend, where American bombers dropped 30,000-pound bunker busters on Iranian underground nuclear sites, a major escalation in regional tensions. In the wake of the attack, the Philippine Embassy in Qatar has advised all Filipino nationals to shelter in place until further notice, urging them to monitor updates and follow official advisories. Meanwhile, 26 overseas Filipino workers from Israel are expected to arrive in the Philippines today. They are among more than 200 Filipinos who have requested repatriation amid the ongoing conflict.
Most ng gustong umuwi, ito yung mga hindi pa veterano na OFW. Siguro last mga 2 or 3 years lang nandun, no? Kasi yung mga naka 10 years na 20 years na going home, sanay sila dito.
President Bongbong Marcos has also called on Filipinos in Israel and Iran to coordinate with the Philippine Embassy for their safety and assistance.
President Marcos orders all concerned agencies to ensure the safe return of overseas Filipino workers who wish to come home. This as the Philippine government has placed both Iran and Israel under Alert Level 3 amid the tension between the two countries. Over 200 repatriation requests are now being processed. The chief executive assured returning Filipinos of immediate financial and livelihood assistance.
Your government continues to act and is ready to serve to protect your safety and well-being. Nothing is more important than the safety of every Filipino.
Over the weekend, the United States claimed to have obliterated 3 Iranian nuclear sites using B-2 stealth bombers and 30,000-pound bunker-busting bombs, escalating an already tense situation in the Middle East. While Israel and many Western nations have backed the strikes, most world leaders are calling for restraint. The Philippines, through its Foreign Affairs Department, is urging all sides to take the path of diplomacy. It also assures assistance and protection for all Filipino nationals caught in the conflict. At an emergency United Nations Security Council meeting, China, Russia, and Pakistan called for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in the Middle East, though the United States is expected to veto the proposal. U.S. Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that the strikes mark a perilous turn in the crisis. China, Russia, and several Gulf states have condemned the U.S. airstrikes as irresponsible and a violation of international law. Meanwhile, the UAE and Saudi Arabia are on high alert amid fears of retaliation and wider regional unrest. In his weekly prayer, Pope Leo XIV called on the global community to stop the war, warning it could become, quote, an irreparable abyss. But don't go away. We'll be back with more stories right after the break.
Lahat po ng mapapanood ninyo sa susunod na mga eksena ay fake. Tandaan nyo po yan.
Ngayon, sobrang dali na gumawa ng fake na video. Muka, boses, pwedeng gayahin. Parang totoo, pero hindi.
Yung fake videos, pwedeng gamitin yan para manghingi ng OTP, password, o mag-spread ng maling impormasyon. Gaya nito.
Bro, legit to. High return in just 3 months. Wala kang gagawin.
Oo, boss. Bayad ka. Minimum lang 50,000. May 100,000 ka na bukas.
Oops, fake lahat to. Pati kami FAK.
Nanalo ako. Pero kailangan daw ng 1,000 pesos. Tsaka OTP. Anong OTP?
Inday, na-aksidente si sir. Nasa ospital. Karon dayon nagpadala og kwarta.
Unsa? Ay, fake pala ako. Pati itong buong eksena.
Good morning po. May promo tayo ngayon. Tataasan natin ang credit limit ninyo.
Alright.
Pakisend po ng picture ng credit card nyo.
Oops, fake to.
Ingat tayong lahat sa fake. Gaya namin.
Lahat kami dito fake.
Pakipadala ng email address at phone number. Oops, fake ako.
Sorry, tita. Fake ako.
Ow, I miss you.
Sorry. Fake kami.
Gagawa ko ng batas na lahat ng senior high school students kailangan mag-necktie.
Bakit po necktie, sir?
Sa ikauunlad ng bayan, neckties ang kailangan. Ay, fake pala ako. Pati itong press con.
Fake news and fake videos will become an even bigger problem. Pati lahat ito fake.
Ang nakakagulat, sobrang dali na gumawa ng video gamit ang AI. Sobrang galing na nito at gagaling pa.
Ang good news, mukhang mas madaling gumawa ng AI-generated video kesa magpaloko, kahit gano'ng kagaling pa yan.
Lalo na kaming mga kabataan ngayon, hindi na kami basta-basta maluloko.
Hindi mo kami maluloko, AI.
Gayunpaman, there are people we care about who can fall for this. At aminin, baka one day, mabiktima ka rin.
Saka sa totoo lang, lahat ng scam na to, lumana. But we've seen that every old scam tries to use the newest technology.
We have also seen that even the oldest scams and the newest toys are no match for knowledge, awareness, and watching out for each other.
Kaya let's be aware. Magtulungan tayo na maintindihan ng bawat isa ang mga nakikita at napapanood natin.
Uulitin ko lang ha, ang lahat ng nakita nyo, fake. Walang totoong tao dito. Pati ako fake. Okay, thanks, bye.
Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a complete and total ceasefire between Israel and Iran. And to break that down, we have with us this morning security expert Chester Cabalza joining us on the line. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Gretchen. Thank you for having me in your show.
Okay. Chester, President Donald Trump has announced a complete and total ceasefire in all caps. Hours after Iran fired ballistic missiles into U.S. bases in Qatar. A quick turn of events that might seem. Do you believe in this announcement? Neither Israel nor Iran has confirmed it.
Well, basically, it's going to be a temporary halt of what is happening in the Iran-Israel war right now, but some were concerning regarding the attacks that we have seen so far in Tel Aviv and also in Tehran. And this time around, Qatar is part of it already, and we are worried that given that, of course, President Trump has said that this is the end of the 12-day war. I think we will see more of the consequences of their actions. And we just hope that there will be no more suicide bombers or maybe airstrikes or missile attacks of ballistic missiles. And I hope that these three nations will sit down together in the negotiating table and discuss the matter to end this war.
You're right. The question is how long, if it's true, how long will the ceasefire last? And it seems to be, I mean, from the surface, President Trump trying to spin his move into being the one that solved this 12-day war, finding peace through strength. Has that always? Do you think that has that always been the goal for the America to enter this war, or is it the spin?
Right.
From your read.
Let's put it to context first. Right. Let's put it to context first. There was a precedence also when the U.S. intervened. Remember that there was also a conflict between Pakistan and India before, and the U.S. intervened early this year. And given the fact that, of course, these are two nuclear powered nations, referring to India and Pakistan. And Pakistan praised President Trump for intervening, and because of that, the conflict temporarily ended. So maybe that kind of template will be also used in the Iran-Israel war, given that, of course, some other leaders have praised, especially President Netanyahu. He has praised President Trump. I hope that this would end the 12-day war. But of course, we are still not confident enough that it will be the end of this, given that, of course, Iran is also a regional power in the Middle East. And of course, Israel is a powerhouse in the Gulf. So hopefully, Trump is doing its best, and the U.S. will at least achieve what he wanted. Because, of course, we can get the point that the reason why perhaps the U.S. intervened because they don't want an escalation of nuclear war, which I think Iran is using because, of course, he has its ambition for its own nuclear program.
When you say that this might be a template, do you mean to say that a third nuclear power might be needed to de-escalate conflict between two nuclear nations?
Right now, my reading is that, of course, the U.S. has been doing its responsibility right now, even if it's being challenged by other major powers. As a superpower, it is acting as the police of the world by, of course, trying to be a peace broker to the Middle East. But at the same time, we have to remember that there are also other actors, political actors, like multinational, supranational organizations like the European Union, in which they were convincing the three nations to sit down and talk for the negotiating table. And of course, you have ASEAN also as a regional organization. Plus, I think for me, you have an American Pope right now who wanted to have peace and end the war. And I think, given that, of course, President Trump and the U.S. are very proud of the current Pope right now, who is American, I think they would try to listen to his admonition to stop the war. And I think those are the convincing actors right now, the credible actors who could help us on how to end this conflict. Because, of course, we've seen a series of wars in the Middle East. It's not only this year that this has happened. This has been decades-long conflict since 1960s to 1980s and 1990s. We see a series of wars in the Middle East.
Well, of course, the world hopes that it was divine intervention that allowed for the election of an American Pope to go against President Trump. But how would you assess? How would you assess the retaliation done by the Iran on the U.S.? Sinabi ni President Trump na binigyan daw sila ng early notice. Sort of an off-ramp, no? Minsan kasi parang, sa totoo lang, hindi ko alam kung maniniwala ako sa mga sinasabi ni President Trump because he has been known to, bloat the situation many times, diba? So, how would you read? Do you think Iran really gave an early notice to the United States?
I think that's the time when the foreign minister of Iran admonished and said that admonished that this is war ready. You started it, you attacked us, and then you wait for the retaliation. I think that is the warning that was given to the U.S. And that's the reason why Trump was saying that there was an early warning signal coming from Iran. But surprisingly, they attacked Qatar, maybe because the U.S. bases located there. There are many different locations of U.S. bases in the Middle East, one of which is in Qatar, then another one is in Iraq. So I think Qatar would be a soft signal. I think this is just a soft launching of Iran's retaliation. Whatever happens in the because nag-announce na, di ba, na stop muna. I don't know if these two countries, I'm referring to Iran and Israel, will honor this temporary warning coming from the U.S.
Why do you think they chose Qatar? Is it because the other countries are more of a threat militarily? Why Qatar?
I think because of the strong presence of the American American bases there.
They have the largest there.
They know also. Yes, that's the largest, and some were saying that Qatar can retaliate also. But of course, knowing that Qatar embraces peace because it's a prosperous nation, it doesn't want to risk its arms to go to use force, basically. So I think I think Qatar just recently opened its airspace again for aviation industry, and I think they are very effective on countering this kind of conflict. But nevertheless, of course, the reason why they have chosen Iran has chosen Qatar, maybe because of the largest presence of the U.S. In terms of their bases there.
Well, Qatar has responded. The spokesperson of their Foreign Affairs Department said, "We affirm that Qatar reserves the right to respond directly in a manner equivalent with the nature and scale of this brazen aggression in line with international law." So very, very diplomatic statement from Qatar. But tell us all about the temperament of Iran when it comes to what you've seen and their history in terms of retaliating, because some pundits would say that the exchange of attacks after the U.S. struck the 3 nuclear sites was polite if you compare it to other attacks in the past. So is this, I mean,
Okay.
the way Iran does respond or measured, is it measured according to their own vulnerability at this time?
Yeah, yeah. Of course, if we try to look at the capabilities and military strength of Iran, well, of course, it's considered as a regional hegemon. It's a regional power. But nonetheless, given that, of course, they are trying to build their nuclear power, of course, given that, of course, it's for the civilian, as he would say, for civilian use, but generally, they are not as strong as maybe compared to Israel and to other some Islamic countries. Maybe because they have they've been ruled by the Ayatollahs, and of course, in terms of their military strength, they have not yet modernized as compared to other strong Islamic countries in the Gulf and in the Middle East. So I think they have the power to project, but as we have seen lately in terms of their performance on how to retaliate and how to contest their power, I think given the point right now, the Ayatollahs are being medyo tagilid, no? And lately in Iran right now, because the Ayatollah and some other clerics are hiding, and we've seen also the death of senior nuclear scientists and other senior military officers. We've seen a change of command lately in Tehran. The military is taking over, and we'll see what happens in terms of how they would use diplomacy and how they would use force. And technically, we'll see what happens after this, given that, of course, the U.S. lately has intervened, and also what kind of support they will get from China, because, of course, China is also positioning itself as a global power. There was a time that China broke peace between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and they were quite successful with that. Hopefully, China will encourage Tehran to sit down and talk about the peace process and, of course, negotiation in the Middle East. But so far, right now, as a defense analyst, looking at how Iran is performing in terms of how they are contesting their military strength right now, it shows that the U.S. and Israel are far stronger compared to Iran right now.
Well, speaking of injuring Iran, it's not just the ceasefire that President Trump has described as complete and total, but he has also said they have completely and totally obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities. But when the Vice President, J.D. Vance, was asked about the location of the uranium they were enriching, hindi niya sinagot ng diretso. Sinabi niya, our goal was to bury the uranium, and I do think the uranium is buried. Kumbaga parang may mga tanong, no, kung talagang nasira nila, hindi ba inurong ito sa ibang lugar? And of course, when you talk about knowledge, it doesn't go away with bombing.
Right,
Your thoughts on that?
No? That's the reason why nung binomba nila yung mga uranium bases nila, and some were saying from the Iranian part, no, that they have transferred the location. But of course, no, there is no piece of evidence that would tell to us that they were successful enough in doing that. That's the reason why, okay, let's allow the ceasefire, and that's good. Hopefully, it would continue and it would end. But I'm worried because given that there is a ceasefire, you'll never know how they would think. No, they would still continue with their uranium project, and more than that, the case that we would like to point out here is that we might see the surge of terrorism again. No, basically because you see the retaliative acts of these nations, and which I think has become part of their culture. Generally, we would see some formations and alliances of armed groups, no, rebel groups and terrorist groups, no. So definitely, if we are not careful enough to watch that, observe, to become more observant, baka dumami yung mga terrorist organizations again.
And at this point, with what you're seeing, as you mentioned, Israel and the United States have proven to be the more powerful party. Do you see this de-escalating now at this point?
Well, I just seen in the Twitter, in the X, no, that they're saying that President Netanyahu has almost completed his job, but I think his real mission is to purge, to end all these terroristic activities or these terrorist tendencies of nations. So he really would want to purge all of them, and I hope that he does not overdo it, because generally we're talking about human rights, and definitely we don't want that they will just use force, brute force for that matter. No, and we have to respect international law, the sovereignty of nations, and human rights, basically.
And speaking of saving the world, no, if you take a look at the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, Iran is actually a signatory to that, but Israel is not. Despite, I mean, the certainty that they have their own nuclear weapons, they have remained ambiguous about it, and inspections have gone on for Iran in this program, right?
Yeah, and also there was no confirmation yet from the International Atomic Agency if those uranium enrichment sites were really purged, no, or were really nasira na. So
or obliterated,
hopefully there would be obliterated. Or hopefully there will be more monitoring coming from international organizations, particularly with the International Atomic Agency. And I hope that, of course, Iran is a signatory of that international law, that instrument on non-proliferation of atomic bombs or energy.
Which they have threatened to leave, right? Which they have threatened to leave. Could that pose a bigger danger here? Because on the other end, they have said that their nuclear program is for deterrence, it is for peace, but there are fears that they might go the other way, since they're seeing that developing nuclear warheads might be the only way to defend themselves and protect themselves.
Agree. And that's the reason why the U.S. has already intervened, because in their assessment, they thought that it's now there will be maybe a threat for a weapon on national interest. Even if that, they ask the United States to bandwagon with them, and we've seen that while they were negotiating, the U.S. started to bomb them red because they thought that they might doing the wrong thing.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and weighing in. It is definitely a pivotal point wherein nations get to go back to the negotiating table. Hopefully, that is what is happening really behind the scenes. We have security expert Chester Cabalza joining us on Morning Matters today. Meanwhile, oil companies are rolling out a nearly 5 peso fuel price hike in 2 stages this week. The first tranche took effect earlier today, June 24, with gasoline up 1 peso and 75 centavos a liter, diesel 2 pesos and 60 centavos, and kerosene 2 pesos and 40 centavos. The rest of the hike takes effect Thursday, June 26. Transport groups have criticized the move, saying even staggered increases burden low-income commuters. They're calling for the removal of fuel excise taxes and are opposing fare hikes that could further strain the riding public. And stay tuned for more Morning Matters. We'll be back right after a short break. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. The Partido Demokratiko Pilipino, Lakas ng Bayan, PDP Laban, has filed a petition before the Supreme Court seeking a manual recount of votes cast in the recent senatorial elections. Legal counsel attorney Israelito Torion submitted a motion for leave to file a supplemental petition for mandamus, asking the High Court to compel the Commission on Elections to conduct a manual audit. The petition argues that verifying the results through manual counting is key to restoring public trust in the electoral process. Only two PDP Laban candidates, Senators Bongo and Bato de la Rosa, won seats in the election. And joining us now to talk more about PDP Laban's petition for a manual recount of senatorial votes is former senatorial bet attorney Jimmy Bondoc. Welcome back to our show.
Good morning, Gretchen, and to everyone, good morning.
All right, okay. You finished the race in 17th spot. I guess it begs a question, how are you with this result? Are you disappointed? This was a higher spot than the surveys had predicted. Am I correct?
Yes, well, I'm always grateful. It's the number of votes that we look at and the trends. And, I never came into this race anyway with any form of expectation. Just here to run and to learn. And I'm very happy with it.
And speaking about learning, we had you at the start of your campaign. Now, what have been the learnings since then over, how to garner a strong finish in the senatorial elections? Kamusta naman ang kampanya?
Well, I learned first of all na hindi kita pwedeng tawaging maganda. Pangalawa, but seriously, Gretchen, maganda ka. Tsaka
Salamat.
yung pag-ikot po, yung pag-ikot po sa Pilipinas is just as a candidate, is just irreplaceable learning, a mine of knowledge talaga. So, in terms of garnering votes, I think talagang nagkulang lang naman ako sa pera. And I want to say that candidly. Kasi I was at awareness ng mga 62%. But my votes were up there with the big guys, So, sabi nila, ba't hindi mo dagdagan yung awareness, Jimmy? Sabi nila. Sabi ko, naku po, yung po ang pinakamahal na commodity sa election, yung awareness. So I meant other learnings, but that's basically the key learnings.
Oh, pero you were actually quite creative in your campaign. If you take a look at your TikTok, gumamit pa kayo ng AI, Tell us all about that and the social media campaign that you pushed.
Well, it wasn't intentional. I've always been a creative fellow, I'm an artist. Yung necessity breeds creativity, So I figured that making songs is still a good way of getting the message out there, getting to the youth, which turned out to be about a 60% turnout, sa voter turnout. So I suppose we were doing a lot of things right.
And now let's go to your petition before the Supreme Court. You're asking for a manual recount. Does this mean that you aren't happy with the results? What is the basis for this protest? Is there suspicion of any fraud or cheating here?
Siguro to isolate, to clarify the parameters of the petition. Wala naman pong personal dito na disappointment at kahit ano po pong sabihin ng mga bashers natin, lalo na sa page ninyo, ang dami kong basher, ma'am, napakadami. Pero to isolate, the basis is legal, The basis is legal. Wala na pong iba. It's not about wanting to sit a seat of power. It's just para po sundin yung mga blatantly na nalabag na batas. Yung manual count naman po, actually, medyo nagkakamali kami sa pagsabi ng manual recount. It's not manual recount, it's manual count. No, kasi yun po ang nakalagay sa batas, no, sa 9369, Section 31. The manner of counting votes is really physical po at the precinct level, no? After the precinct level, pwede na yung electronic transmission ng result. Pero at the precinct level, meron talagang manual count. Kaya nga po tayo may poll watchers. Otherwise, wala nang gagawin yung poll watcher kung di magbantay against flying voters.
Actually, nakausap ko dito si Attorney Torion, pati na rin si Comelec Chairman George Garcia on this provision. And ito yung sinasabi mismo ng batas natin, no? The member shall assume such positions as to provide the watchers and the members of the public as may be conveniently accommodated in the polling place an unimpeded view of the ballot being readied by the chairman of the election return and the tally board being simultaneously accomplished by the poll clerk and third member respectively without touching any of these election documents. Nung tinanong namin kay Chairman Garcia, nasabi niya kasi naging automated na yung counting. Dito sa bagong batas natin, automated counting election law. Pero kung may katanungan daw kayo, they welcome it. Dapat i-file ito sa Supreme Court. Pero ang sabi din niya, wala na sa kanila ang jurisdiction. Nasa after June 30, it will be with the Senate Electoral Tribunal and House of Representatives Electoral Tribunal. At wala rin actually sa Supreme Court. Dito na babagsak sa Senate at saka sa House. Handa ba kayo idalin doon?
Well, that's the reason why we brought it early, no? Yung sa mga nagsasabi na bakit ngayon lang, mali po. Kasi po, supplemental nga to, ibig sabihin may nauna. At ang nauna nung April 3 pa kami nag-file, po. Ngayon, pag sinasabi po ni Chairman George na wala ng jurisdiction ng Supreme Court, lagi naman may jurisdiction ng Supreme Court kapag merong grave abuse of discretion, no, amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction. That's the expanded jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. So, bagamat meron talaga sa SET tsaka sa HRET na jurisdiction dyan dahil lumilipat pagkatapos ng mga proclamation, oath, assumption, we are of the opinion that there has been grave abuse of discretion.
But Chairman George Garcia also mentioned that this is the way it has been done over in the past elections and they just followed suit. What would you have to say about that?
Well, I would have to cite the law on that, no? Dahil nakalagay po sa Civil Code na no amount of, kumbaga, I'm paraphrasing, no? Kahit po may mali na custom or na neglect na batas, it does not repeal the law. There's only one way to repeal or amend the law, which is by a succeeding law. Nakalagay po sa batas yan, kahit hindi natin sinunod, kailangan sunod.
But in your opinion, were there irregularities in the elections that you wish to point to or that you observe?
Well, it's not an opinion. Again, I'm trying very hard to refrain from giving opinions. There are facts, no? Kaya nga po kami nag-supplemental petition dahil nakalagay po sa Rule 10 ng Rules of Court that if there are supervening events, no? Parang i-apprise mo yung Supreme Court kung ano yung mga nangyari henceforth, no, after ng filing. At ang mga nakita naman po natin sa balita na supported by affidavits by now, no, ay meron talagang irregularities. Yung mga nahanap na balota, yung mga nahanap na mga election paraphernalia sa barangay Buhangin. Also, yung things like online voting na nakalagay din sa batas na hindi dapat gawin, no? Wala pang enabling law ang online voting. So ang nangyaring turnout is napakababa sa OFW, ano? So again, these are not observations, no? These are facts. And I think we should act on them kasi alam nyo, bawat 3 taon may election tayo eh. So bawat 3 taon magbubuluhan po tayo kapag hindi natin inayos yan. Sasabihin, ba-violate natin ng batas, tapos biglang, ay, wala na po sa amin ng jurisdiction, nasa HRET na. Tapos ulit-ulit lang yun, bawat 3 years, no? So, I'm here to try to correct what I think is a wrong system.
Because if you're calling for a manual count of the votes, it does mean there is some sort of doubt over the, I guess, the
No.
authenticity of the count, right?
No, no. I think that's not the assumption to make, you know. Kasi you're calling for the manual count because it's prescribed by law. I'm not proposing any other theory. Wala ako sinasabi na nagkadayaan. I'm here to be a watchdog na may mga batas na hindi nasunod at nilabag. At kung ano man po ang mga anomalya, alleged man yan, are actually secondary. Ang primary is the clear and blatant disregard of the law, no? Kung ano man yung naging resulta nun, bahala na po ang Supreme Court na aralin. Dahil yung mga nangyari na anomalya, kung meron man, ay nakaugnay doon sa paglabag sa batas.
Ay, sabi kasi ni Attorney Torrio, no, nabanggit din niya sa programang ito na si Pastor Kibuloy in a precinct had parang the same number of votes in different barangays. Parang nagpapare-pareho yung mga count. Ano?
Pare-pareho.
Meron din
Nakita
ba
ko
kayong meron din ba kayong ganun na observe on your end?
Ito, personal na first-hand knowledge to mula sa kaibigan, ng mga kaibigan. Meron akong kaibigan na singer, musician, sikat siya, but I don't want to drag him into this mess, no? Pero nag-single vote siya, bondok, no? Kasi talagang kaibigan siya eh. At ang lumabas, binay, no? With all due respect po, wala po tayong aspersions na ginagawa kay ma'am. So, ang daming nagbe-message sa akin na gano'n na 10 ang binoto nila, 9 ang lumabas. Pero ito, first-hand knowledge. Another one is yung isa ko pong waiter sa Aromata, dun sa aking restaurant. Ganun din, nag-single vote siya, bondok, tapos binay po yung lumabas. Again, it's not an allegation, it's a fact. Nag-affidavit din siya, nag-complain siya, pero ang problema doon, tapos na yun. Tapos, wala na, nag-submit ka lang ng complaint, wala na. So, I'm not saying it's isolated sa akin. Ang sinasabi ko po is, there might be something wrong either with the computers or like example, no, alam naman po natin yung sa software na ang ginamit yung 3.5 na version instead of the 3.4. Hindi yan dumaan dun sa independent source code review, hindi siya dumaan sa technical evaluation committee. So, wala na po ba tayong gagawin doon? Okay na yon, parang quits na lang, parang ganon. Yun po yung aming sinasabi na this is not moot because according to the law, di ba, pag moot na, hindi mo na pwede i-complain. Pero there are exceptions to that rule. And one of the exceptions is if it's capable of repetition yet evading review. And that's so jurisprudential. Capable to ng repetition. And in fact, in the next 3 years, in fact, 2 years.
It will be the same process.
Oo. Kailangan natin ayusin yung sistema kahit tatakbo man kami or hindi. That's people are missing the point, no? But it's okay, sanay naman tayo dyan.
Well, would you know if yung mga nag-report sa inyo na iba yung lumabas sa kanilang balota, kung sila ay nag-file ng official report dito sa COMELEC?
Yes, no. Doon mismo sa site, you're asked to complain, but hindi mo pwedeng picturean, hindi mo pwedeng iuwi yung complaint, iiwan mo lang doon. So that's the process na ginawa po ng COMELEC. So talagang wala pong kalaban-laban si complainant para sa akin. No?
Has no response been sent by the COMELEC? Wala. Oo.
Wala po.
Actually, tinatanong din namin po yan sa COMELEC kung bakit nga ba ganun, what do they intend to do? And then they were saying that titignan nga nila kung if there's sufficient maybe complaints in an area, pwedeng maaaring buksan, pero kailangan maihain officially in their channels yung gano'n. Tinanong nga din namin kung pwede ba kung saan may highest incidence of complaints. Is it possible to have a manual audit of that? Sabi nila, manual audits are designed to be random according to law. And I do understand what you mean in terms of being able to verify the actual results. But on the other hand, sinasabi rin ni COMELEC Chair, wala ring pruweba na iba yung nasa balota at iba yung nasa resulta. Kasi maaring nag-blot lang yung ink, Well, actually, sabi niya, hindi naman back to back daw eh. So, imposibleng Pero ang sabi niya, walang pruweba na iba yung binoto sa lumabas. Oo nga naman.
Walang pruweba kasi nasa kanila. So, buksan natin. Yun nga yung point eh. Pag nag-manual count tayo at ibangga po natin dun sa mga nakalagay dun sa mga high-tech na mga kagamitan, di malalaman natin. Buksan natin. Hindi kasi nga ang hirap po ngayon no parang pag sinabi mong i-manual count, parang ay babalik tayo sa barok na na sistema ganun.
But
The law is the law.
it is what it is, and it will cost a lot at this point to have a manual count. Who will shoulder the count?
Siguro yung mga paayuda po. I-realign nila. Hindi po. Ang akin, ang dami na po nating first of all, I don't think it's going to be expensive, no? Kasi pag sa precinct level, and again, pwede nilang hindi gawing pangmalawakan, pwedeng designated areas. Paano po magiging mahal? At saka mandated naman po ang COMELEC to do so anyway. So the law is the law, whether mahal or hindi. But again, I'm saying, I don't think mahal siya. Pero kung lagi po natin gagamitin dahilan yung mahal, ako po, nakita naman po natin recently, ang dami nating pinagkakagastusan na very contentious, no? So siguro naman na sulit ito para sa ikasusulong ng demokrasya natin in the future, no?
Hindi po ba yung petitioner po ang mag-shoulder usually ng cost if they ask for an opening of the ballots?
That's for a protest. Pero kasi ito, what we're asking nga is for you to follow the law. In fact, ayoko na yung sinasabing recount. Mali po yung recount. Pati ako, I'm guilty. Nagkakamali ako. It's manual count. It should have been counted at the impetus, no? Na bilangin natin ng manual. Nakalagay po sa batas. Bilangin natin para po may ibangga. Wala po kami ibang sinasabi kundi yun. Na kasi the supervening events have shown na it demands yung pagbabangga kasi nga halimbawa yung overvotes. Ngayon lang po nangyari sa kasaysayan ng mga halalan natin na mayroong 18 million overvotes, 16.8 million sa senatorial. Dati po hanggang 1 million lang yung overvotes, ano po. So, hindi ba ito enough? Hindi ba ito enough para subukan nating pagbanggain man lang yung physical doon sa technical?
What's next for Attorney Jimmy Bondoc? I mean, now that the Senate race is over, people are wondering, what's next for you?
Well, I'm still a lawyer, thank God. So I practice and I have not ever stopped performing bagamat hindi ako laging nasa limelight. So I've formed the Jimmy Bondoc Foundation, which it's been there for a few years, no, pero hindi ko siya ni-register muna. And now it's official. And lahat po ng ginagawa kong pagtatanghal at pati po parts ng kita sa law firm ay napupunta po dun sa foundation.
Sino po tinutulungan ng foundation?
Geared kami towards education kasi ako po ay believer ng education po ay talagang the great equalizer. But it's yung purposes namin are multi-fold naman. Education, health, mga relief assistance, ganun. Pero education, meron na po kaming magiging scholar this year. May law students din kaming susuportahan kasi I believe in the study of the law. No? So, ganun po. Ganun po, mga simple lang po.
May plano po ba sa 2028?
Magko-concert po ako sa 2020.
Sa West Philippine Sea. Joke.
Pwede. Oo, pwede.
Well, Attorney, pagdating sa paghanap ng katotohanan, kasangga mo kami dyan. There is no doubt about that. Thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing with us all about the petition of PDP Laban before the Supreme Court and your insights after the 2025 midterm elections. We have Attorney Jimmy Bondoc, senatorial candidate, joining us today. Thank you so much. Don't go away. More matters to discuss right after a break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. A new development in the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte. Her legal team has formally submitted a response to the Senate Impeachment Court, firmly denying all allegations. Here is the report.
Around 6 p.m. on Monday, a messenger from the Fortune Nervasa and Salazar law firm arrived at the Senate to deliver copies of Vice President Sara Duterte's official response to the writ of summons issued by the impeachment court on June 11. The Vice President's camp submitted 6 copies of the response, each 35 pages long. VP Sara maintained that she has done nothing wrong. In a document shared with the media by the House Prosecution Panel spokesperson Attorney Antonio Bucoy, the impeachment complaint against VP Sara was labeled as a mere scrap of paper, lacking any legal basis. The Vice President's camp echoed the same argument made earlier by her ally, Senator Bato de la Rosa, questioning the constitutionality of the complaint. They claim the House violated the constitutional one-year rule, which allows only one impeachment proceeding per official each year. The February complaint against VP Sara was reportedly the 4th filed against her. Her camp argued that action on the earlier 3 complaints, filed as early as December, was deliberately delayed to bypass this rule, calling it an abuse of the impeachment process. VP Sara is currently facing accusations of conspiring to assassinate President Bongbong Marcos, misusing confidential funds, bribery, and links to extrajudicial killings in Davao City. But she insists there is no evidence to support any of the allegations. The title of the VP's response is marked Answer ad Cautelam, which means the reply is being filed with caution, potentially reserving arguments for later.
Maybe in their minds, they'd like to reserve some arguments, no? But in compliance with the order of the court, nag-file sila ng answer, but they're expressing that they're doing so with precaution.
Now that the clerk of court has received the VP's response, copies will be distributed to Senate President and Presiding Officer Chiza Escudero, court spokesperson Attorney Reginald Tonggol, and all senator judges. The House Prosecution Panel has 5 days to issue the reply to the VP's answer, which falls on a Saturday, so submission may happen by Monday, June 30.
Vice President Sara Duterte calls President Bongbong Marcos a quote scammer. According to the VP, this is a fitting description of Marcos for failing to fulfill his campaign promises back in 2022. Sara also called the chief executive insecure for allowing the arrest of her father in March. But Malacanang is not letting the remarks slide. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro issued a sharp rebuttal, responding to the Vice President's accusation point by point.
Budol? Talaga? Hindi ko alam kung sino ba ang budol. Hindi natin alam kung sino ba ang nambubudol. Sa panahon, sa nakikita po natin na pagtatrabaho ng Pangulo, sa pag-uutos sa amin na focus sa trabaho at hindi pamumulitika, sino ba talaga ang nambubudol? Wala po ako nadidinig sa Pangulo na siya po ay nanghinayang kung siya man po ay nakipag-team up sa Vice Presidente. Kung may nagsisisi man na sa kanya ay maka-team up siya, it's their loss, not the President's.
The COMELEC will appeal the Supreme Court's recent decision to abandon the so-called second-placer rule in Philippine elections. The SC declared that a candidate who placed second cannot be proclaimed in case the winning candidate is disqualified or found ineligible. The poll body said it needs clarity on the application of the ruling, especially on whether it applies before or after the elections.
Gusto nating malaman anong implikasyon nitong desisyon doon sa nailabas na namin so far. May mga ilalabas po sana kami ngayon at saka sa susunod na araw na maaaring parehas yung implikasyon sa Halosos versus COMELEC. So, ano pong dapat na gagawin ng COMELEC? Dapat bang itago muna namin, wag na muna namin ilabas at hintayin na lang na maging final and executory yung desisyon ng ating pong kataas-taasang hukuman. So again, subject pa naman po yan sa motion for reconsideration.
In the case of Congressman Benny Abante versus Joey Chua Uy, the COMELEC Second Division disqualified the latter, who garnered the most votes. If Uy is out and Abante is only the second placer and there were only 2 candidates, who takes over as representative of Manila's 6th District?
Maaari po na hindi ma-apply yung mismong doktrina na bagong doktrina ng Korte Suprema sa issue ng ng succession. Subalit ayaw natin pangunahan po yon kasi nga po gusto namin maging maliwanag yung bagay na yan, lalo na kung tayo po ay magpapile pa ng motion for reconsideration at bilang pagrespeto at paggalang natin sa Korte Suprema. So, hihintayin po natin kung ano. Napakalaki po ng implikasyon po kasi talaga nito. Napakalaki ng implikasyon nung kung sino ang makakaupo after the election or before the election, after the election, cancellation ba o disqualification ng candidacy.
In response to rising tensions in the Middle East, PLDT is offering free international direct dial landline calls from the Philippines to Iran and Israel until June 25. This initiative is intended to provide relief and support to Filipinos with family or friends in the affected areas. The free calling service is available to all PLDT landline subscribers across the country. PLDT Chairman and CEO Manuel V. Pangilinan underscored the significance of staying connected during periods of uncertainty. He emphasized that the company recognizes the emotional strain of not knowing how loved ones are doing in regions experiencing unrest. Meanwhile, in sports, Creamline remains unbeaten in the PVL on tour after turning back Akari in 4 sets Monday night at the Chavit Coliseum in Vigan. Alyssa Valdez and Michelle Gamabao led the Cool Smashers with a combined 33 points as they overcame a tough challenge from an Akari squad missing key players. Creamline takes a week-long break before facing Signal on July 1, while Akari looks to bounce back and grab its first win against Zeus Coffee on July 5. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. I'm Gretchen Ho, your One News All Sides all the time.